He lit it and hung it up in the center of the storage building. It swung back and forth on the nail, making the shadows dance wickedly. The hissing of the burning gas sounded evil. John was lying on his stomach with his wrists and ankles taped. There was also a strip of duct tape over his mouth. He kept moving his head from side to side in order to get a look at who was in the shed with him. However, the position he was in prevented it. Mark walked up behind him and roughly flipped him over. John's eyes were wide with fear or curiosity. Mark couldn't tell which. When the criminal saw who it was, the look changed to one of hate. Mark reached down and took pleasure in ripping the tape off of John's face. "Hiya, John. It's so good to see you again," Mark said contemptuously. "I think we need to catch up a little." John's only response was a hate-filled stare. "I want to know how you knew the rapid response team wasn't coming. Did you make a deal with Barnes?" Mark demanded. John didn't say a word. Mark reached down and pulled the murderer to his knees. "I'm only going to ask you one more time. Do you have a deal with Barney?" Mark was yelling now. John didn't answer. Mark's fist impacted just above John's left eye and drove him back to the concrete floor. It was the hardest Mark had ever hit someone. His knuckles hurt, but it wasn't enough to diminish the immense pleasure he took from striking the captive. Mark let him lay on the floor for a moment, then pulled him back to his knees. "You'd better talk to me, John. I'm really pissed right now, and I'm going to take it all out on you unless you tell me what I want to know. My brother's on his deathbed because of one of your guys shot him, and one of them wounded my son, too." "I hope they both die," John said through clenched teeth. Mark reacted without even thinking. His right hand smashed into John's face. Only a split second before a left hook spun the MZB leader around and back down to the floor. With his hands taped behind him, there was nothing John could do to stop his face from hitting the concrete. Mark, still enraged from John's comment, jumped down onto his adversary's back and began to pummel the back of his head with rapid-fire blows. This unconscious reaction only served to hurt his fists more than it did the hard skull he was assaulting. After about 30 seconds, he began to tire. He realized he was holding his breath. "What am I doing?" he asked himself. He began to shake. He was so filled with hate and rage that he could have killed John. To kill him in a gunfight or when they'd fought earlier was one thing, but to beat a man to death when his hands were tied behind his back was quite another. If he did that, was he really any different than John? He drew in a deep breath and slowly blew it out, trying to calm himself. It took a couple of minutes, but he composed himself to the point that he at least didn't hear his heart pounding in his ears. He needed information from John. That's what he came in to get, and that's what he had to accomplish. He walked back over to his prisoner and rolled him onto his back. Mark inwardly winced at what he saw. The impact between the floor and John's face had definitely come out in the floor's favor. John's nose was pushed off to one side, and the skin was split right down the center of it. Blood was gushing out of both nostrils. If John could see the horrified look on Mark's face at all, it was most likely out of only one eye, as the other one was rapidly swelling shut. Mark could see that John was bleeding from his mouth, too. Mark lost his will to interrogate the man further.